and welcome to the Toolbox instructional video. My name's John, the project manager here at SAB, and this is our Toolbox Kit. Now, when you first open your Toolbox Kit, you're going to see all the parts in front of you. So, you see in this bag we have the two ends called TB3. We have the main body of the toolbox, that's TB1. We have the top part of the toolbox, TB2. We have the front stiffener, TB4. This here is going to be our handle. We're going to form that towards the end so you have something to hold your toolbox by. And last but not least, you're going to have to go pick yourself up also a hinge. So that's two hinge sides and then a hinge pin right through there, you see? Alright. So once you have all of your materials, make sure you have a list of our handy-dandy instructions. And then we can begin. Now, the first step in our instructions is to get everything laid out and labeled. So, you're going to need to take everything out of this bag. Here, don't throw this page away because you're going to need this here later on in your instructions. Take note, again, on the names and how everything's called. Check up on here if you ever get confused in the instructions. So you can set these aside, though, for now. And we're going to continue taking things out of this bag. You see these two clips? Your handle is going to fit into those at the end. Another piece that should be in your kit is this latch, and that's going to go on towards the end as well. So now that we have all of our pieces taken out, write the number that corresponds with that piece. Now, not the name, the number. Our instructions refer to a part by a number because when you're going to be building on the big airplane, there's going to be so many names of parts that it's just easier to call them TB1 or, in the case of a part, maybe R904. So make sure that you label them with their numbers. Now, one of the important steps in this toolbox is to notice that TB3 is not the same on both sides. As you can see, there's 3 holes here and 4 holes here. You have to make sure that the 4-hole side matches up with the 4-hole side and the 3-hole side matches up with the 3-hole side. Make sure you do that before you start riveting or you're going to be in some big trouble. When you cleco, the whole point of clecoing is to hold 2 parts so that they're as even as they can be, so that the holes match up, and when you're drilling it won't shift on you. So a good way to make sure that the parts don't shift on you is to start with the corners when you're clecoing, and then cleco approximately every other hole. So you see here, I did about every other 2 holes, but just so that when you move it around, that piece isn't going anywhere. That's the important part. An important thing to remember when match drilling is to always wear your safety glasses. So now, you can see, when we're looking at our material here, that we have something securely clecoed to the other, so we're ready to match drill. And to match drill all of the holes of TB3 and TB1. As you're going along and you reach a cleco, or your drill can't fit somewhere, remove all the clecos that you need to until it can fit there. If you feel like you're removing so many clecos that it's becoming unstable, you can put it in holes so you didn't put them in before. And once you've match drilled all of this, we're ready to move on to the next step. When clecoing and match drilling, it's alright to leave a part clecoed to the body of the toolbox after it's been match drilled. Different hole sizes. Make sure to very carefully read the instructions that we have for you right here. Don't drill the wrong hole size, or you're going to run into some problems later on. Take into consideration that the pneumatic drill has the capability of moving much, much quicker than our battery-operated drills. This gives us a cleaner drill of a hole, so it's always preferable, if you can, to use the pneumatic drill, but it'll be alright if you use our battery-operated drills as well. It's important to label the inside of each part, and also to label left or right when looking at the front so that you know which holes you've match drilled with which TB3, because you go through all that trouble of making sure these holes are nice and lined up, and you don't want to put that on the outside over here. So really, all you have to do is mark inside, and you'll know which is which. With the positioning of our front stiffener here, TB4, the front stiffener must face inward. That little bendy part must go into the toolbox. You got it? Don't do it the other way around. One of the trickier parts of the toolbox kit is cutting this hinge to length. So, you want to get your top out, your TB2, and you want to use that as a measuring device as to how long you want to cut your hinge. So you're going to place your hinge all the way up against the bottom of TB2. And you see where it is right there? You want to make a line right there, so you know how long you're going to want to make the hinge. Now keep in mind that it's on an angle, so it's going to be slightly larger than what you need, so make sure you cut inside of that line. Once you have marked how big you want your hinge, transfer that to the other side of the hinge, so that when you put it back together and are trying to put TB2 on top of TB1, the hinges seat into each other nice. Once you've done that, you need to get this hinge out. Now sometimes it's really easy and it will come out just by some wiggling, but other times it's a little bit of a pain. So what you could do is use your handle and push it out just like that. You see? Pushing in one side on the handle pushes out the hinge. And as you see, because you've marked both sides, this hinge here is ready to be cut without cutting your hinge pin. To cut our hinge, we're going to use a device called tin snips. Once we've marked our hinge, you're going to find the position of your line, and you're going to cut on the inside of that line. Remember, when we drew that line, it's going to be just a little bit too long to fit inside of TB1. So then all you do is pull it together, and it cuts through the hinge material. Cuts like butter. Now after you cut your hinge, we're now going to clamp our hinge in place. So it's important to make sure that we have our eyelets, that's these little curly cues, facing the right way. So on the bottom of our toolbox, we have these eyelets facing in. So it's really easy to position it by just setting it up there and making sure that when you press down, the eyelets are sitting nice and flush against that edge of TB1. Now, later, we're going to be clamping our hinge on the top of TB2. So, you have to make sure that your eyelets, when they're clamping here, will face into the toolbox. Now once you've clamped the hinge to our toolbox there, we want to clamp our cut hinge in here as well. So the same way, use Cleco clamps and put at least 2 of them on here to hold it in place. Once you have both of the hinges clamped in place, it's good to check if they sit and seat into each other nicely. So when you have it clamped here and clamped here, you're going to try and put it on, and if it lines up nice and perfect so that when you would close this, the top would sit on like it should, then no worries. If not, perhaps you need to move around your clamps so that they seat in nice with each other, and that you see that these outer parts of the lid are on the outside of TB1. You're ready to match drill the holes. So what you want to do is you want to use the pre-drilled guides of TB2 and match drill the holes with the Cleco clamps in place so that the hinge doesn't move on you, and match drill all of the holes. Before you will be able to match drill the bottom hinge side to the toolbox, you're going to have to remove the front stiffener that's been clipped into place. Once you've match drilled the hinges, you're ready to match drill the front 2 holes on TB1. These holes will correspond with the latch holes. Make sure that the latch has the bigger side on bottom. By now you've match drilled and Clecoed almost all the major parts of the toolbox. Now you must de-Cleco all of the parts from the main body and deburr them. After that, remove vinyl from all parts with vinyl. Some notes on deburring. It's important when using the large drill bit and deburring holes that one doesn't get too carried away. Otherwise you start removing too much material and you're not deburring, you're actually countersinking. That creates a bad hole. On using the file. When using the file, it's also important not to get too carried away. All you want to do is remove that sharp edge that sticks up. So holding the file at a 45-degree angle and going over 3 or 4 times is more than enough. When removing the vinyl from parts, make sure that you copy any material that was written on the vinyl, any markings saying inside or perhaps TB1, TB2. Make sure to mark that on the metal itself, because when you pull off the film, all of your markings go with it. Once you've deburred everything and taken all of the vinyl off, you're ready to go dimple. Take careful consideration when dimpling to make sure you dimple the correct side of parts. When dimpling, it's important to choose the right set of dies. You want to choose a die that's closest to the type of hole that you have drilled. Make sure you don't mix and match die sets. This die should always be with that receptacle. When dimpling, it's important to note which side you'd like the dimple on. For instance, if we would like the indent of the dimple on this side, we want this side facing down so that it is created on the side that we would like. Do you see how the indent is on the outside now? That's the side we would like. So always make sure the side that you want to be depressed goes on the bottom, like so. Dimple. When using the rivet squeezer, it's also important to note that it, like the dimpler, has different sets of dies to use. When you're using flush rivets, it's important to use this bottom set with the squeezer. When you're working with regular non-flush rivets, it's important to use this top set when you're working with those. Throughout the instructions, we ask you to rivet in different ways. We ask you to stick very closely to the instructions. When riveting with a pneumatic rivet gun, often it asks you to have a bucking bar. Now we have two different types of bucking bars. See this long one? This won't do well in small spaces, so obviously don't use this one. We have this much smaller one, so choose with regards to how much space you will have behind the rivet. After you've riveted most of the toolbox, you're going to have to form the handle. Now when you're forming the handle, you might find it beneficial to put the handle into one of the grips over there, so that you'll have an easier time bending it with pliers or a hammer, whatever you find easiest. When placing the clips for the handle to the top of the toolbox, it's important to keep a few things in mind. First of all, you might want to use your handle as a guide to find out how far apart the little clips should be on top of TB2. Once you've done that, mark only one hole on each clip, because you'll be positioning it after you fit your handle inside. Once you've marked one hole for each clip on the top of TB2, drill those holes. Once you have clecoed the clips into the holes that you've drilled, then you can mark and drill the other set of holes for the clip. Drill those as well. Once you've deburred both holes, you're ready to start riveting. Place the clip on the top of TB2 and rivet only one side. Do the same with the other clip. Then fit your formed handle inside of those clips. You can finish those two rivets. Last but not least, you're ready to cut your hinge pin to length. Make sure that it is about 3/16 shorter than the hinge itself, so that when it slips in there you can crimp either end and keep that hinge pin from ever coming out. Now you're done with your toolbox. I hope you found this video helpful on how to avoid some things that could go wrong while building the van's toolbox. But just as motivation, so that you won't lose heart, here's what it looks like in the end. So you can see which clip goes where. It's a thing of beauty. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your training.